The exam room was freezing, that sterile, clinical cold that seems to seep right into your bones and settle there like a permanent winter. I sat on the edge of the table, the crinkle of the sanitary paper beneath me sounding like a thunderclap in the oppressive silence of the room. I was 12 weeks pregnant, my hands resting tentatively on my still flat stomach, holding my breath in anticipation. I was waiting for that rhythmic galloping sound, the fetal heartbeat that makes every fear of the first trimester disappear and makes the future feel real. But when the transducer touched my skin and the graining, flickering image appeared on the monitor, Dr. Eris didn't smile. She didn't congratulate me. She didn't turn the screen to show me the little life growing inside. Instead, her hand began to tremble slightly, a tremor she tried to hide by gripping the wand harder. Her face, usually a mask of professional calm, drained of all color. She looked at me with an expression I will never forget, a mix of profound, agonizing pity and urgent, desperate fear. She leaned in so close I could smell the faint scent of coffee and peppermint on her breath, and her voice dropped to a jagged, frantic whisper that pierced through my heart. "Sarah," she said, her eyes darting to the heavy wooden door and then locking back on mine with terrifying intensity. "I need you to listen to me very carefully, and you cannot react out loud. You are in more danger than you can possibly imagine. I need you to leave your husband right now. Do not go back to that house. Do not pack a bag. Do not answer your phone. And for the love of God, do not tell him you are here today. If you want this baby to live, if you want to live to see tomorrow, you need to get a divorce today." My world stopped. The air in the room seemed to turn into lead, making it impossible to breathe. I loved my husband, Mark. To the rest of the world, Mark was the perfect man, the attentive partner, the brilliant scientist, the man every woman in our circle envied me for. He was the one who tucked me in, who cooked every meal, who told me I was his entire universe. Why was a woman I'd only met twice telling me to destroy my life based on a gray shadow on a screen? I didn't know then that the ultrasound hadn't just shown my baby. It had revealed a dark, clinical secret that Mark had been hiding behind his lab coats and loving smiles for years. It was a secret that turned my perfect marriage into a high-stakes biological trap. Do you ever really know the person sleeping next to you? Have you ever realized in a single heartbeat that your protector is actually your predator? Stick with me, because what I discovered in the next hour would not only change my life, but would expose a conspiracy that went far deeper than a failing marriage. My name is Sarah, and I have spent most of my 30 years trying to be the woman who has it all together. I grew up in a town where the grass was always manicured and the secrets were kept behind heavy velvet curtains. I learned early on that appearances were a form of currency. When I met Mark at a pharmaceutical gala 4 years ago, I felt like I had finally found my match. He was older, established, and possessed a quiet, intellectual intensity that was incredibly magnetic. He worked for Vestratech, one of the most powerful pharmaceutical firms in the country, heading up their life sciences division. He didn't just want to cure diseases, he wanted to optimize the human experience. I was a freelance architectural designer, someone who saw the world in structures and foundations, and Mark felt like the strongest foundation I had ever known. Our courtship was a whirlwind of private dinners, trips to secluded cabins, and a level of attention that I mistook for deep, abiding love. Within a year, we were married and living in a glass-walled masterpiece on the outskirts of the city. Mark called it our sanctuary. It was miles away from the noise, surrounded by deep woods, and equipped with the latest security systems. At first, I thought it was romantic, just the two of us against the world. But as the years passed, the sanctuary began to feel more like a gilded cage. It was a slow, subtle transition. Mark was so gentle about it. He would suggest that my sister, Mia, was too dramatic and that her phone calls only stressed me out. He would point out that my best friends were jealous of our lifestyle and that I deserved better influences. He took over the grocery shopping, the cooking, and even the management of my small business accounts, telling me I wanted to focus on my art and be at peace. I felt cherished. I felt taken care of. I didn't realize that I was being systematically isolated, my support system pruned away like dead branches. Mark was the sun, and I was the planet revolving around him, basking in a light that was actually burning me. When we finally conceived, after 2 years of trying, our joy felt boundless. Mark became even more obsessed with my health. He began preparing a customized prenatal regimen for me, smoothies infused with what he called pharmaceutical-grade supplements from his lab. He told me standard vitamins were garbage and that his formulations would ensure our child had the best cognitive development possible. He even tracked my sleep patterns and my blood pressure on his tablet. I thought it was just the behavior of an excited, overprotective father-to-be. Mark insisted I see a specific doctor at his firm, but on this particular day, a scheduling error led me to the public clinic and into the office of Dr. Eris. She was an old colleague of my father's, a woman with a reputation for integrity that Mark had always scoffed at. I went to the appointment alone, thinking I would surprise Mark with the first clear images of the baby. I had no idea that I was walking into the moment that would shatter the foundation of my entire existence. The inciting incident was a silent, clinical revelation. As I lay on the table, the cool gel felt like a strange intrusion on my skin. Dr. Eris moved the transducer over my abdomen, and for a moment, I saw the tiny, flickering pulse of my baby. My heart soared. But then Dr. Eris stopped. She moved the wand back and forth over a specific area near the uterine wall. She adjusted the settings, zooming in until the image was a grainy map of shadows. The silence in the room stretched until it felt like it would snap. I watched her eyes. They weren't looking at the baby, they were looking at the tissue surrounding it. "Sarah," she said, her voice tight, "are you taking any medications other than what's on your chart?" I shook my head, my voice small. "No, just the supplements Mark prepares for me. He's a specialist, you know. He says they're the best." Dr. Eris's jaw tightened. She printed 3 different images and laid them out on the counter. "I've spent 20 years in reproductive pathology, Sarah. I've seen every complication there is. What I'm seeing here isn't a complication, it's a signature." She pointed to a series of dark, honeycomb-like patterns in the uterine lining. "This is cellular scarring caused by a compound called TX8. It was a synthetic hormone developed by Vestratech for reproductive synchronization. It was pulled from clinical trials 4 years ago because it didn't just synchronize cycles. It allowed the administrator to effectively turn off a pregnancy at will by triggering a specific hormonal crash that looks exactly like a natural miscarriage." I felt a coldness spread from my stomach to my limbs. "That doesn't make sense," I stammered. "Mark wants this baby more than anything." Dr. Eris looked at me with a sadness that felt like a physical weight. "Sarah, TX8 isn't just about ending a pregnancy, it's about control. In low doses, it makes the subject lethargic, highly suggestible, and physically dependent on the antidote, which is usually hidden in the next dose. Looking at your blood flow and this scarring, you've been on this for years, even before you were pregnant. He hasn't been trying to help you conceive. He's been using you to test the long-term viability of the drug's suggestibility effects." The room began to spin. Every kind gesture, every custom smoothie, every time he told me I seemed tired and needed to rest, it was all part of a clinical trial. My marriage wasn't a romance, it was a laboratory. The sensory details of the room became overwhelming. The hum of the fluorescent lights sounded like a buzzing hive. The smell of latex became suffocating. I realized that if I went home, if I drank the smoothie he had waiting for me, I might never wake up as myself again. I was a test subject in my own home, and my baby was nothing more than a variable in his data set. I didn't go home. I took Dr. Eris's advice and drove in the opposite direction, my hands shaking so hard I could barely grip the steering wheel. I ended up at a cheap motel on the edge of the city, a place with flickering neon signs and the smell of stale cigarettes. I sat on the edge of the lumpy bed, staring at my phone. It started vibrating almost immediately. Mark. The caller ID showed his smiling face, a photo I had taken during our honeymoon. "Where are you, honey? I've got dinner ready. You shouldn't be out this late in your condition." The word condition made my skin crawl. He didn't see me as a wife. He saw me as a biological state. I reached out to Mia using a burner phone I bought at a gas station. When she answered, I couldn't even speak at first. I just sobbed into the receiver. "Mia, he's been poisoning me," I finally choked out. "Everything he said about you, about my friends, it was all to keep me quiet." Mia didn't hesitate. "I'm coming to get you. Tell me where you are." But as we were talking, I saw a familiar black SUV cruise slowly past the motel. Mark's company cars were all equipped with advanced GPS. I realized with a jolt of terror that even if I turned off my phone, the car I was driving, the one he insisted on maintaining for me, was likely bugged. I fled again, leaving the car in the motel parking lot and slipping out the back. I spent the next 3 days moving between shelters and 24-hour diners, living in a state of hypervigilance. The psychological toll was worse than the physical exhaustion. I started questioning my own memories. Was he ever really kind? Was that vacation in the mountains just a way to test a higher dosage in high altitude? The gaslighting was so effective that I felt like a stranger in my own body. I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the hollow-eyed woman staring back. I met Mia in a crowded train station. She looked horrified at my appearance. "We need to go to the police, Sarah," she urged. But I knew the police wouldn't be enough. Mark was a high-level executive at a firm that practically owned the city's political infrastructure. If I went to the precinct, he'd have me committed to a private facility before the paperwork was even filed. I needed the files. I needed the data he kept in the home office, the sanctuary that was now my biggest fear. I had to go back. I had to face the man who had been treating my womb like a petri dish. The moral dilemma was suffocating. Did I risk my life and the baby's life to get the evidence? Or did I run forever and let him do this to the next woman? The sanctuary looked beautiful in the moonlight, its glass walls reflecting the trees like a shimmering ghost. I used the spare key I had hidden in a hollow stone, my heart thudding so loudly I was sure the security system would pick it up as an intruder. I knew Mark's schedule. He was at the annual Vestratech Gala, receiving an award for innovation in women's health. The irony was a bitter pill in my throat. I made it to his office, the room smelling of expensive leather and old books. His computer was biometric, but I had seen him enter his backup passcode a dozen times. 10/12/22, the date of our first miscarriage. My blood ran cold. He used the death of our first child as a password. I got in. I started downloading everything, the legacy project folders, the spreadsheets labeled with my initials, the video logs. I clicked on a video file from 6 months ago. It was Mark, sitting in this very chair, talking into the camera. Subject S1 shows high resilience to the TX8 baseline, he said, his voice as clinical as a weather report. The suggestion phase is 90% effective. She has successfully severed ties with all primary external influencers. The current pregnancy is a planned variable to test the drug's impact on maternal-fetal bonding suppression. If successful, we can market this to the government as a population stabilization tool. I felt a hand on my shoulder. I didn't hear him come in. Mark was standing behind me, still in his tuxedo, looking down at the screen with a small, disappointed sigh. "You were always too curious for your own good, Sarah," he said softly. He didn't look angry. He looked like a scientist whose experiment had just been ruined by a clumsy assistant. "Do you have any idea how much work went into this? We were so close to a breakthrough that would have changed the world. And you've gone and contaminated the data." He reached for a small, pre-filled syringe in his pocket. "It's okay. We'll just have to start the reset protocol. You'll forget tonight. We'll move to the facility in Switzerland, and we'll try again." This was the moment, the choice between being a victim and being a survivor. As he moved toward me, I didn't scream, I didn't plead. I grabbed the heavy glass Innovator Award from his desk, the one he'd just won, and swung it with every ounce of rage and maternal instinct I had left. It shattered against his temple. He slumped to the floor, the syringe skittering across the hard wood. I didn't look back. I grabbed the hard drive and ran into the night, where Mia and a team of private investigators Dr. Aris had helped me hire were waiting at the gate. The fallout was an earthquake that leveled Vestratech. The data I recovered wasn't just about me. It exposed a decade of illegal human experimentation and a black market trade in reproductive control drugs. Mark didn't go to a private facility. He went to a maximum security prison, though he still maintains in every interview that he was pioneering the future of humanity. He truly believes he did nothing wrong, which is the scariest part of all. The legal process of the divorce was secondary to the medical battle. I spent months under the care of Dr. Aris and a team of specialists, undergoing a grueling detoxification process. There were days I didn't think I would make it. There were days I woke up screaming, convinced I was still in that glass house, waiting for a smoothie that would erase my mind. But slowly, the fog lifted. The lethargy Mark had cultivated disappeared, replaced by a fierce, burning clarity. And then there was the miracle. Despite the scarring, despite the TX8, my body held on. 7 months after that fateful ultrasound, I gave birth to a daughter. I named her Clara, which means bright and clear. When they placed her in my arms, she didn't look like a variable or a data set. She looked like a victory. I moved back to my hometown and bought a small old farmhouse with a porch that creaks and a garden that grows wild. There are no glass walls here. There are no hidden cameras. I've rebuilt my relationship with Mia, and we spend our weekends planting sunflowers and talking about things that actually matter. I realized that the perfect life Mark had built for me was a lie designed to keep me from seeing my own power. My marriage didn't end. It was annulled as a criminal act. I reclaimed my name, my business, and my mind. The healing isn't over. I still jump at the sound of a silver sedan or the smell of a hospital. But I am no longer a subject. I am the author of my own story. Scene. Sarah is sitting on her porch, holding a cup of tea. Clara is playing in the grass. The sun is setting, casting a warm, golden glow over the farm. I often look back at that day in Dr. Aris's office. I think about how easy it would have been to just nod, smile, and go home to my perfect husband. I think about how close I came to disappearing entirely. People ask me how I knew to trust a stranger over the man I'd shared a bed with for years. I tell them that I didn't just trust the doctor. I finally started trusting that small, quiet voice in my own gut that had been screaming for years. We live in a world that tells women to be polite, to be cherished, and to ignore the shadows for the sake of the sunlight. But sometimes the sunlight is a spotlight, and the person holding it is trying to blind you. If you're watching this and you feel like you're living in a sanctuary that feels more like a prison, listen to your shadows. Look at the patterns. Don't be afraid of the truth, even if it burns your world to the ground. Because once the fire's out, you get to decide what to build in place. I lost a husband, a fortune, and a perfect life, but I gained a daughter and my own soul. and in the end, that was the only successful experiment Mark ever performed. He tried to find the limits of human suggestibility, but all he found was the limit of a woman's patience. My name is Sarah. The fog has finally cleared, and for the first time in my life, I can see everything.